Go ahead and I'd like to get the city council meeting for Tuesday, June 13th started at 6:01 p.m. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Robles,
Present.
Councilmember Hernandez, Councilmember Rizaldi,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Costa Junior,
Present.
Mayor Gilligan, absent.
Okay, we all please rise in for the pledge of allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is moment of thanks and appreciation and condolences if anybody has any time to reflect on that. Agenda review, is there anything that the council would like to move around for tonight's meeting?
No.
Staff? No?
No.
Okay. We have two proclamations tonight. And Councilwoman Azaldi will be the first one.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can anybody hear me? Yes, no, awesome. I have the honor of declaring our first proclamation in honor of Juneteenth. So this proclamation states, whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring the slaves in Confederate territory free, paving the way for the passage of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas word about the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation was delayed in reaching authorities and African Americans in the South and Southwestern United States to June 19, 1865, some 2.5 years later. And whereas Emancipation Day observations are held on different days in different states in the South and Southwest and in other parts of the nation. And whereas June 19th has a special meaning to African Americans and is called Juneteenth, which is combining the words June and 19th, and has been celebrated by the African American community for over 150 years. And whereas at the national level on June 15th, 2021, the Senate unanimously approved a bill that would make Juneteenth the date commemorating the end of slavery in the United States, a federal holiday. Now therefore be it resolved that by the virtue of the authority vested in the mayor and on behalf of the City Council of the City of Guadalupe, Mayor Julian does hereby declare June 19th, 2023 as Juneteenth in the City of Guadalupe, California, and urge all citizens to become more aware of the significance of the celebration in African American history and in the heritage of our nation and city. In witness, I have hereunto set in my hand and caused the seal of the City of Guadalupe, California to be affixed this day, this 13th day of June, 2023.
Councilwoman Azaldi. Our next one that we have is another proclamation that our city administrator, Todd Golden, will read. Thank you.
Stand next to Shannon here. This proclamation, unfortunately, I don't want to read this off, but I'm gonna have to, or I want to. It's expressing appreciation to Shannon Sweeney for her service as a Public Works Director / engineer of the City of Guadalupe. Whereas Shannon Sweeney was hired as Public Works Director Engineer on July 15th, 2019. And whereas she provided professional engineering and management to the city, helping generate a commitment to continuous improvement in many operational changes in the Public Works Department that will continue well into the future. And whereas Shannon Sweeney has served the city and residents of Guadalupe well and has exhibited her strong sense of civil service, dedication to providing excellent customer service and professional expertise. And whereas Shannon has dedicated most of her career to public service and obtained multiple classifications and certifications to handle full services in the city of Guadalupe. And whereas her breadth of life experience reaching beyond engineering, together with her composure and ready wit, have made her an indispensable resource for city staff and officials. And whereas the city has benefited from Shannon Sweeney's commitment of time, energy, knowledge, and intelligence in numerous projects, initiatives, and matters. Now therefore be it resolved by virtue of the authority vested in the mayor and on behalf of the city council of the city of Guadalupe, it states I, Airstone Julian, take this opportunity to express sincere appreciation and recognition to Shannon Sweeney for her dedication, commitment, and valued contribution to the citizens of Guadalupe. In witness whereof, I hereunder set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Guadalupe to be affixed on the 13th day of June, 2023. So, I'm gonna give this to you. If you have any comments. Token for you. All right. This is for you. And for you. You have a few words?
Only a few.
I've been honored to work here for the city. I've come to love this place, and it's very, very bittersweet that I leave. I'm going to another agency that just is close to home. And if it weren't for that, I would still be here. But I want to thank everybody for being so dang supportive. Happy we got a lot of stuff. We laid a lot of infrastructure, so Guadalupe can be any wants to be. So I'm going to be watching from afar. And as I keep telling everybody, I'm not dying, you know. I think I've handed my phone out to everybody. You're welcome to call. I don't want to see things fail. I want to see them continue. So like I said, I'll be keeping an eye out and keeping in touch. So thank you.
Anybody on the council that would like to say something? Oh, sure.
Thanks for creating that. You want to say a few words?
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Shirley.
I think on behalf of myself, obviously coming on and being one of the newer members of council, I just immensely appreciate Shannon and her knowledge and her view on how things are run and her vision and what she's done for this city. I'm so impressed in this short period of time just to see how much her hand has touched so many positive things. So I'm so grateful, and I'm so sad we're losing you, but I also, as a mom, as somebody who has a family, I can't want to hold you back. You know, I think having that balance of work life, we want nothing but the best for you. I'm so glad you gave everyone your number. So we are definitely going to stay in touch, and we're just so grateful. Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah, Shannon, it was great working with you. You had a lot of professionalism, a lot of experience. Sometimes you would come up with some of the quickest ideas on how to solve some of our problems, but we have got a lot of things done in this last 4 years. I think it'll be remembered for these 4 years and getting a lot of these projects done, and very much appreciated. Thank you. Also quick-witted.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm so appreciative of your time, your knowledge, for helping me along the way. I'm so bummed that we are losing you, but I'm excited that, we'll be able to reach out. Thank you so much.
I Shannon, I also want to read something from the mayor. He's not here tonight. And he said, please give my thanks and appreciation to Shannon for her commitment to the city of Guadalupe. Her technical leadership on her many projects is appreciated.
Thank you. Whoever comes in to fill in this role has some big shoes to fill. And all, but everything since I've joined on the council and the vision you had moving us forward with all the projects you dealt with and fixing things that needed to be fixed and on got them going and done means a lot. You took a lot of pride into everything you did, even though you didn't live in the city. You treated it as if it was your own home, and for myself, I appreciate that. Thank you. Our next item will be we have a couple of presentations. First presentation is long-term financial planning presentation by Cameron Witz. The Weiss Law Firm and Andrew Flynn of the California Municipal Advisor. Thank you, Mr. Weiss.
My pleasure. Yes, good evening. Yeah, unfortunately, Andrew Glenn could not be here this evening. But I think I can speak for him in terms of some of the financial aspects to talk about here this evening. I am, my background is in public finance and law. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a municipal advisor registered with the SEC and the MSRB. So I've been involved for 30 years in public finance matters for cities, counties, special districts in California predominantly. Adam Flynn is a wonderful person. I'm sorry I couldn't be here. Long history in public finance as well. He's also a registered municipal advisor. He has a steep background in city government. He's also sits as a city council member in his spare time, and he is just a magician with spreadsheets. So we lean on him a lot, and he put together some of the spreadsheets in this presentation this evening. You'll see. So without more background, let's go. Oh, well, I guess I should preface by saying we were invited here this evening to really give maybe 15 minutes of your ear, bend it a little bit this evening, and just kind of talk a little bit about a master long-term financial plan. Now that means a lot of different things. So when I say financial plan tonight, I'm really referring to something that's more long-term in nature. So you're looking out in a horizon, not so that a lot of time budgets and CIP and other planning is a 5-year shorter duration. So what we're talking about here is taking a longer view on things. Andrew Flynn developed some models, and he has some wonderful base models that are, we like to say, buttons and levers and toggles and switches that allows staff flexibility during budget season to have a customized menu that it used for budgeting process to come in and sort of manipulate, play with things with, assuming that that's what they're interested in. But that's the outcome of the ultimate outcome of what happens here during a process of putting together a long-term financial plan. It's collaborating with all the staff members and making sure that nothing is forgotten in the process in terms of what city staff has to go through. We just had a great tribute to Public Works Janet, and I'm sure we would have been leaning heavily. So you're right, big shoes there, but that's the idea, is that you want senior staff to have a big say in the development of the future of the city. And their vision is really important that it gets implemented into this long-term picture and planning aspect. So what we kind of bring together is just a coalescing of skill sets. So taking a blended approach of how staff sees it, and then kind of applying some real life testing on it in terms of grant opportunities, in terms of revenue enhancements, in terms of expense characterizations to make sure they're accurately portrayed into the future, specifically with regard to pension. Pension becomes, for most government agencies these days, a huge albatross in terms of trying to plan for the future. So we're fortunate enough to have 20 years of experience in pension specifically, both on the litigation front against CalPERS, But also more importantly, on the planning aspect of how does CalPERS work in its micro elements, and so that you can understand what you can do on a macro level to change the outcomes of future budgeting for the payments for CalPERS. So that's sort of the backdrop of what we're going to talk about. Now, I'm going to flip through some screens. We don't have a lot of time, so I hope that at least gave you enough of the idea of where the journey is, what it's all about. But we'll kind of flip through. I'll give you some more insight as we kind of develop this. So when we're talking about goals in a financial plan, we're really talking about, as I said, really doing the diligence with staff to make sure that we see their vision. And you start there, and then you assess some of those opportunities and those opportunity costs. And what we're really talking about on the expense side of the ledger is the pension analysis. It's like I said, it's one of the largest the largest bridges to try to get over when you're talking about long-term planning, because I'll show you in the future in another slide just how expensive it's going to become in the next 20 years. On the long-term financial plan side of the picture, you need to be able to attract capital. That means not just grants and low income, or subsidized opportunities, which we want to do at all times. That's the key component to having low cost capital. But you also want to make sure that if you have an opportunity to do something on a larger scale that you need in the future, that you're getting the best interest rate and the best terms possible. So we do a lot of work with S&P, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, so we have a good background understanding both the planning aspect as well as the outcome aspect. So when you're going for lowering interest rates, you want to make sure that you have the tools that you've developed internally through policy development, through financial planning, to make sure that the interest rates are the best you can get. Obviously, financial sustainability is the most important aspect of a long-term plan. It all has the pencil, and it with those buttons and levers that I mentioned, those are the toggling effects that you can create when new opportunities arise to sort of plan outside the box of the financial plan. So on the what's included slide here, you can see that what we're really doing is we're just kind of highlighting some of the levels of the plan. So when we're talking about financial position, it's the ideas of how you develop your future so that you obviously have when you're talking about a public participation of any kind, you have a duty to make sure that all stakeholders are apprised of all matters. And so as part of the financial plan, the public should be invited, and we encourage it during, budget discussions, planning discussion meetings and so forth. The outcome of that is starting to develop policy. That's where the policy reviews come in, any modifications to your existing policies. So you're trying to get to a dovetailed, cohesive policy, sets of policies that dovetail with your budget and with the long-term financial plan. Again, pension and OPEB management are key cornerstones to the development of the expense side of the ledger. The capital financing planning is different for every city. I know that the city of Guadalupe is, from what I understand from the city manager, is looking at a couple of different things right now that might require some form of financing, whether it's through a secured assessment, Belarus, or what have you, or maybe some internal financing that the city could do itself. So you want to make sure that those ideas and concepts are baked into the planning process. And last on this slide is the alternative funding sources. This is your CDBG. This is your other funding sources. This is USDA, to the extent that you want to take advantage of some longer term opportunities, some grant monies there. There's EPA funds that are out there. There's a lot of different sources, and we try to stay plugged into those opportunities. So the process as a whole becomes circular. That's the idea, is that you want to establish the goals, you want to review your performance of how you've done, and continue to develop policies. And ultimately in the plan, you want to make sure that you're implementing and monitoring each time you go through the cycle. On the revenue side, we talked about some of the ideas in terms of alternative revenue streams, but you really want to be looking at all your different opportunities. So from an ad valorem basis, there's opportunities there all the way down the line to grants, subsidies, and others. Expense side, operational, your capital expense, your pension expenses, again, you want to just make sure that these are all thought through and baked into the long-term picture. Alternative funding sources. We're just lining out a few here. Again, it's impact user fees, assessments, special taxes, private borrowing. There are some statewide JPAs that have special programs out there that are really attractive right now. If you have to go, there is an opportunity. I'm going to show you a slide in a minute under the pension side to level out your payments. And that would create a financing opportunity to create savings for the city. There's also grants and loans and low cost financing from state and federal government. So this is, we're going to talk quickly about the pension capital improvement side of it, just to kind of give you an idea. If you look at the couple of first columns there, this is really your plans laid out per plan. So we have miscellaneous safety and your PEPRA plans after that. If you focus on the miscellaneous and safety plans, you can see that right now you're in a pretty good spot for funding percentage. At that fourth line down, you're 86% funded. However, we know that last year there was a negative 7.4% loss that CalPERS experienced. That is going to add to your plans, unfortunately, next year, to the tune of what you can see there in the red column, or the red lines under those columns. And it's going to drop your plans down to the low 70%, mid 70% range. And they're right now having another 3.5% year, and they should be at 6.8. So they're experiencing unfortunately, another negative year. And that is going to impact next year when you report. So this is important planning material here. This is the stuff that, as we say, is an important feature that goes into it. This is a look from the graphical perspective of what those new bases are going to look like. So right now you're paying the green, horizontal greens, the vertical green bars. And you would have been perfect in terms of the blue and the dark blue. That is how your plans amortize presently. Because last year, 2 years ago, there was a 21.3% earnings year, and it really helped all agencies to break the back end of the cycle to bring it down. But the way CalPERS works when there's new UAL, unfunded liability, that's being added to plans, is they ramp it in 20-year increments. So what you're seeing on the red is just building in 20% increments this new amount of debt that's going to be stacked on the city. Unfortunately. So this becomes a steep hill to climb. And again, this becomes a pinch point for future debt service or future pledges, whether it's SRF or USDA or what have you. The rating agencies and these different agencies, federal agencies, they're savvy to pension. And so they really pay attention. And if you have a pinch point, they're not going to be as willing to lend. There's going to be some, and nor would the city want to enter into negotiations knowing that it might have a pinch point in the future in its budget. You know, this becomes one scenario, for example, that is outside the box thinking that we like to think could go into a pension policy, a pension management policy. For example, this is where if the city had some reserves, and we just put $1 million in here as an example, that it was saving towards a capital improvement project, whether it be streets, whether it be wastewater, water, doesn't matter. The idea is the same, is that you use the $1 million to pay down your pension liability, and you finance the $1 million project at tax exempt rates or at subsidized rates, whatever you can get. We assumed a 3.5% or 3.25% cost of funds on a 15-year basis, and you can see the savings are almost $1 million. So by taking away 6.8% debt and replacing it with 3.25% debt, you're essentially legally arbitraging that differential and creating savings out of thin air. So it's money you would have spent anyway, but it's just how you spend it. So these are the out-of-the-box features that you want to be thinking about with opportunities to do something in your budget from an annual basis perspective. And this is a look at how a refinancing could look. The vertical bars are your total pension costs stacked up over the years. Your horizontal lines become financing opportunities. So if you look at the blue line, for example, I think that's I can't really see it, but I think that's a 15-year, or is that a 20-year? It might be a 20-year. It is a 20-year. Thank you. You can see that by refinancing the light blue vertical bars, which would be part of the part that you might think about refinancing, and replacing it with that straight line, you're getting budget predictability, and you're saving about $1,900,000 in this scenario. So again, this is an opportunity to do something outside the box to create budget flexibility and savings for the city of Guadalupe. While not stressing your plans, because what we have here is a 90% funded level. So financing up to get you to 90%, not to a full 100%. The reason why is because CalPERS can earn a good year, and your numbers will exceed 100% potentially. So you don't want to over finance yourself. You want to stay in a level that's comfortable to prevent from overfunding, but yet not costing you money on the 6.8% interest rate. So it's kind of a strategic approach to stay under the 100 at a comfortable 90%. And this is the potential savings that you can achieve. And if you just look at this, you can remember the chart before when I showed you the red line stacked on top of it and how it really increased. This is what it might look like after refinancing, where it becomes that more budget-friendly type of de-escalating curve instead of the line, the red line, which represents what it would be if you do nothing. So again, it's all about financial planning, trying to get these things, these ideas and concepts baked into opportunities to do things into the future. And unfortunately, I just can't see this very well, but I do know that this is what we put together here is just an example of a 20-year and a 40-year financing scenario. And we really just wanted to highlight like a USDA concept, because they're usually a 40-year concept in terms of amortization versus a 20-year. And you can see through this that you're with the 40-year, you're paying less, but you're also incurring more debt on the back end. So really, if you don't have the budget flexibility to incur shorter amortization debt, you're kind of forced into these kind of programs. And I'm not saying it's a bad program. It's all about capital stacking and understanding how amortization schedules are going to stack on each other for the future, because it might be that you have to go with the longer amortization because you have more needs, and therefore you have a different planning effect for debt service. And again, this is just a simple timeline that talks about how you develop. I already mentioned how staff collaborates. This is about a 3 to 6 month process, typically, where you have several meetings, you bring it to council, there's more input. You ultimately want to come out of it with revised policies. And we like to think of the main policy being the investment policy, the debt management policy, the pension management policy, and the reserve policy. Those are kind of the core policies that should be kind of baked into the overall financial outlook and opportunity for the city. And then ultimately you want to get to execution phase, and that's sort of the to the right side. We're executing on some of these strategies. So tonight it's really hard to get all this kind of into a conversation. So I'm sorry I'm rushing and I kind of gasping for air here. So I apologize for that. But I just wanted to basically thank you. That would be great. Thank you. I do appreciate it. So this is really just a wrap up here, and any questions that you might want to ask, it's up to you. But I think the summary is that you want to be vigilant about the future. Obviously, you've got a great staff. It's really just how do you coalesce all these concepts into a plan and the council can buy into, the staff is buying into, and put it all into one place that you have, hopefully a long-term document that's really sustainable into the future. So I think that's pretty much, I think I used up my 15 minutes a lot. Any questions? It's appropriate to ask questions.
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Can I make a comment? I know that this was really due to the unfunded liability for the CalPERS. In in the schedule that you're stating here, I know there were a couple options that they were telling us that we could utilize. I don't really see those options on here, but really that's kind of what we were wanting, more of a, explanation about, I think. One, I didn't want to finance with debt, but, like the other options as far as, the what was it, the 437?
Oh, the 115 trust?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of wanted to explain, something on that, and if you have, how that makes into, our unfunded liability.
Sure. Yeah, and the pension side of it as a whole, yeah, it can be quite lengthy, so I apologize. I had to kind of pick and choose what was gonna be in here tonight. There's so much. I think maybe a way to think of it here is that when you look at this chart, the vertical bars at the very top represent the payment level on an annual basis. So if you think about it, those are your payments, they're going up obviously into the future, and then they come back down, and that's the way CalPERS works. They ramp up and then it sort of stacks on each other. Each year they have a new base, they add it. And if you can visualize, it's like a tidal wave, because you're ramping up 20% at a time up to 100, and then you're fully amortizing. So until you get to 100%, you're not fully amortizing your pension cost. It's like a credit card debt. They're asking you to make less than 100% of your amortized payment, so it's adding to your debt, right? So to the extent you're not at 100%, you're still riding the curve upwards. That is the ramping process, and you're going to be adding more debt, because the way CalPERS works, it's a time value of money exercise, and they have to earn 6.8% on every dollar in their funds, or else they create more UAL for you. You have to pay that tab. Unfortunately, they don't do it. And so the only way this ever gets worked through is through management and on an annual basis. We're really big believers. We talked about a policy with staff and that could be another discussion where it's really intricate. You come in and there's a lot of discussion on UAL, and you have OPEB as well. I can't recall. So no OPEB, but on the pension plans, you have a lot to do in the policy work, and there's mitigation ideas and concepts in that policy that council and staff get on the same page. One of them is just, for example, is just annually committing to some reserves or surplus funds, if it's available in the budget, to bring it to council to say, okay, this is what we have available this year. This is our pension debt or UAL that's outstanding. And this is the return on our money if we use it to make a discretionary payment to pay down our pension debt and save ourselves 6.8% on every dollar that we're able to put in above what we owe. That's one example. There's many of them. Another policy decision could be no ramping, right? If you get to a point where you can call CalPERS and say, this new base that's coming, we don't want to ramp it. Go ahead and fully amortize it. It's called fresh starting. That way, at the time you do it, you're basically paying day one, you're starting to drop it's like a mortgage. If you pay a variable rate mortgage and you're paying on a 7-year and you got a 30-year AM, a lot of it's interest, right? So same thing with your debt with CalPERS. You can say, we don't want to ramp it. We want to start paying down our principal from day one. So that can be in the policy if you have the money. And this is where the 115 comes in, is to the extent that you are able to get your mind to the point where you can get to a policy objective. That's a goal. So let's say right now your policy is at 70%, 75% funded. And you say, we'd like to be at 90% funded. And we're gonna do these things to get there, to try to get there. One of them might be the budget surplus, each year chip away, the slow strategy of chipping away at it. Another might be a refinancing. Another might be doing the CIP exchange, that $1 million capital project that you have money in reserve for, and you use the $1 million to pay down pension and use tax exempt financing to pay for that capital improvement cost. That's another strategy. So there's a lot of different ways to start to pay down your pension cost. So on the pension 115 trust, if you get to the 90% level, it doesn't mean you should stop there. You still have 10% that's very expensive, right? Because as a city, Your legal obligation is to your employees is to pay 100%. The only reason why you don't pay 100, from our perspective, is because you don't want to super fund. You don't want to get to the point where you have 90 or 95% and they have a great year and all of a sudden you're at 101 and you can't get your money back. It's not that you lose it, but you can't get it back until they have a bad year and they offset it. That's the way CalPERS works. So what you do is you say, okay, when we get to our policy goal, we'd like to think about a 115 trust. That's an IRS designated vehicle that allows you to put money in and it earns a very attractive interest rate, similar to the discount rate, 6.8% historically. And then you're able to have that 115 trust fund grow and be there as a buffer and a stabilizer for your plans. So it buffers you from super funding and it stabilizes you at your policy objective. If that's 90%, that money in your 115 can be used in an annual basis to make a payment to CalPERS instead of coming out of the general fund of the city. So it's a kind of a tool in the tool chest to be able to utilize going forward. Yes, was there a question? Okay. And so there, as I said, there's a lot that goes into all of this stuff. So tonight's kind of hard to kind of push it all in there. I apologize that I didn't hit that for you right off the bat, so.
I think what I was also, so really this is more or less trying to get us to have a policy in place, a financial policy in place is really why we reached out to Weiss Law Firm. So that's kind of where the decision is making, and just giving you guys an idea of where we're at with our unfunded liability. And I think right now we're like way behind about $1 million. So the presentation here is more or less us coming up with either us using Weiss as to help us do a financial policy to cover that unfunded liability.
Yeah, so, yes, and right now just, after, when you get your July reports, your number will be the combined red column. I'm sorry, I'm getting a glare, I'm gonna have to step out here, so. Yes. So the 20, it'll be $4.9 million, unfortunately, in UAL debt going forward. So it's becoming a bit of an issue, so.
Well, I look at this as pay it down now. You could think of your reserves and try to get to the 50%. But maybe that's not the goal right now. When you go this route, you pay this down, you're gonna gain a lot more and have a higher reserve later. So it's kind of like really just paying down your debt, not paying all that interest. And then also look at other things like maybe we look at a Melrose assessment district where we go to the voters and a parcel tax, or a Melrose they call it. And we go to the voters and we say, we want to see if you're willing to vote on this as 3/4, I think, of the vote. And this is just one aspect where you could then use that money to fund recreation or police. And so if you're doing that through another tax, which, we don't always like tax, but if the voters agree to it, then that allows the general fund in other areas to use the funds for that to help offset things like this. And eventually it just kind of, it's more of a fiscal workout plan, looking at all kinds of things within the city. I would personally like to ask the council at some point, maybe we look at a Melrose tax that could help fund recreation, police, or some other component. And that just allows us to eliminate some of the interest payments that's on this unfunded liability. And that's why they would come in and be experts in sort of working with us to put out, I call it fiscal workout plan. And which is, they can look at our overall finances, and there's a lot more that they offer as well, besides just what he's presenting tonight.
So based on this information, the information tonight, are you looking for council direction, or is this presentation just informational, correct? Yes, okay, just wanted to make sure I'm understanding. It is a lot of information, it's a lot of good information to process. If I think something important and something I'm glad everyone's thinking about. I just wanted to make sure, we're not acting on anything, we're just.
No, not acting, just presentation.
Yeah, exactly, so.
Guidance
It was
to maybe look at further,
A lot of information. So
Yeah,
thank you
there
so
is.
much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I wish we had more time. Maybe if you want to invite us back, we can do a micro segment on one or two aspects, whatever you'd like to sort of study on a little bit more. We're happy to do whatever else desire is, you know, and staff.
It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
but right now we're funding our PERS. Our PERS with, you know, just general, like when you're talking about this 115 trust, it's putting into that, we can convert it into that and get a better return than what we're getting, which would help buy this down. So it's a long-term savings. And so just things like that, little pieces here and there that could, like he says, maybe utilize, you know, other areas of grants, could offset different things in the general fund, bring down some of this debt, then worry about our reserves later, maybe.
Yeah, we're happy to give you references, statement. Well, we're doing this all over California, represent a lot of different agencies from city counties to special districts all over. And so it's not like you're the first one stepping out trying to do something novel or innovative. It's just a matter of it really is a difficult concept for most people. We do this all the time, day in and day out with Zoom sessions, for example, and it takes a lot to really get all the stuff sort of filtering through because it's complex the way it all works. So I know this evening is just sort of a touching base, getting to hear it for the first time. And we're, like I said, that's why we're happy to have, more study sessions, whatever it takes to get more information, because information is the key. Once you can assimilate and think through all the different aspects, then good decisions will come out of it no matter what. So.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my
Yeah,
pleasure.
this was a really great presentation.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we'll prefer to hear more information than not enough, right? That was perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, oh, you're so welcome.
Are there any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Great evening. Sorry.
Our next presentation is for the Central Park renovation project. Presentation by Pacific Coast Land Design. Welcome.
Thank you for having us back. As a reminder, I'm Brooke McDonald, I'm landscape architect for Pacific Coast Land Design, and this is one of our principals, Eric Bird. So we wanted to walk you through where we are in the park planning process. Bye.
I think there's
There's a.
yeah. Yeah, no problem.
So tonight we're gonna just walk you through the past history, just as a refresher of what was proposed in the grant scope site plan, that we conducted a public outreach last October. We're gonna show you the illustrative site plan, which is our 100% design development plan. Some updated renderings of the park, and we're gonna talk about which pieces of the park are tied to those grant scope line items, and then go over the project cost where we are right now and next steps.
So I'll jump in here for a minute. Many of you are probably very familiar with this picture. This was where we came in, and this was the grant scope site plan. It was the hard work of the community to develop and get this grant. We came in after through the RFP process to piggyback on this and take it to completion. This was actually a really great starting point. A couple of the things that we noticed, and we've been here and talked a little bit about, that had to change, that you're going to see in the presentation tonight, is the location of the skate park and the dog park. They flipped. And then also kind of that bottom, what is the bottom corridor here against the railroad track? That's actually railroad right of way. So we lost a little bit of space in the park as because of this, but albeit this was a fantastic, we worked on several of these. This is part of the California State Parks statewide park program grant program. We worked on several of these applications, and I will say this is by far one of the best ones coming in to step into. So it's been really fun for us. Another thing, I'll forget how these.
We can do it.
Thanks.
Another big thing about this grant program is it's heavily based in community-based planning efforts. So just to apply for the grant, before we ever got involved, I think there was a minimum, like they try to incentivize you to do 5 community meetings and make sure that the park came from the community itself. That didn't stop when we came on. We had this community meeting in October. We've also met with your Parks and Rec Commission as well, and kind of kept that process going checking back in with the community to make sure that we're in line with what the community wanted in this park. So this was some images from the grant workshop or the design workshop back in October. On the right there, you're gonna see he's not here tonight, but that's our esteemed skate park designer, Jackson, works for a fantastic skate park design company. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. We did some polling at the meeting to generate some feedback on what wanted to be in the park. One of the big ideas you're gonna see in the design now is the idea of the dunes. That was kind of the overwhelming winner of this, and we think we're representing it really well. Some of the different amenities, you're gonna see most of these. So in the climber, we presented a couple specific options, help use those votings to select what's in the park, adult exercise equipment as well. The swings, the spinner and the rocker, these are all part of the little playground that you're gonna see. And then there was a separate skate park. When we walked, and that was kind of, you even saw in that grand scope site plan, it just was an area left for skate park. There wasn't a lot of outreach. So that was one of the first things we focused on. Jackson put together this great community engagement, really asking about what the community wanted in what is a pretty small skate park, but trying to do a lot for the skate community here. And Brett, the difference from novice to intermediate to expert, trying to provide as much in a small area as possible. So questions like, how do you, not just for skateboarding, do you use rollerblades, scooters, those sort of things? Most people skateboard, so that's what it's built around. This is where we're at right now. Brooke mentioned 100% design development. It's kind of this last stage as we get into working drawings to actually design how to build this park. We're kind of at that last kind of late preliminary conceptual, really working on the details, making sure everything in here can be built, but we're not into the specific details of where the nuts and bolts go, if that makes sense. We're kind of at this last stage of showing you pretty pictures before we get into the real working nuts and bolts of this thing. So this is where you imagine that grant scope site plan a couple slides ago. This is where it is now. You can see the big things here is that the dog park, kind of that bottom left corner, the south part of the park, and the skate park have flipped. The circulation is very similar to what's there now. And then the kind of the central focal point of this are with these dune picnic areas, and you'll see them better in the renderings, but number 14 right in the middle there is this kind of one of the landform ways we're really paying homage to the dunes and the local ecology that you're going to see. So we have a little video.
I want to jump in there. The last time we were here, we were presenting 50% design development plans, and this picture is almost the same. The only thing I'll note that's different is we had a 10-foot sidewalk running through the park, and now it's 8 foot. And I'll talk more about that later, but we're dealing with costing, so we're really trying to take a close look at that.
And I think we're only going to play a little bit of this video, but there is a link to it in tonight's agenda too. It's on YouTube. You can click to. So if you're attending the public, we'll also make it more of a public video after tonight's meeting, but there's a hyperlink in the agenda for tonight, but we'll play the first 30 seconds to a minute of it if you haven't seen it. The next part goes into a little bit more detail about all the little pieces. It's about 4 minutes long, but we'll spare you of all of it. We've got renderings, so you can go through some of those still renderings are here. So this is from the pedestrian bridge, actually looking out over the jail, looking at what the park will look like with the dog park here in the southern portion of the park. One of the big questions we asked the Parks and Recreation Commission was we had a couple of options of what surfacing in the dog park could be. They weighed in on this. So right now you're seeing will be a loose gravel fill for the majority of the dog park. Dog parks are actually a really challenging place to have surfacing. We could put grass there, but dogs will kill it over time. You also have to water it to try and keep it alive. You don't want to make it too hot. You also don't, we have stormwater runoff issues with permeable, paved surfaces that we're trying to mitigate as well. So gravel was a good, cost blend performance thing that's in there. So that's what you're seeing there. The other kind of green area right next to that is where the majority of the park's stormwater is going to end up as well. So that's our what we call our best management LID practice, where we're going to infiltrate stormwater and collect it for the park there. This was great. Before the grant, before we got involved, someone flew the park with this you'll see it down at the bottom. I kind of stole their drone footage, but someone flew a drone. So we captured a couple stills to get these renderings so you can see the existing versus the proposed. So this is a great view. You can see the skate park, and also you can see that where the fence, that chain link fence is there now in the railroad right away. That's that space that we were talking about, that railroad right away that we're kind of, the park is kind of losing in a way. But one of the nice things is the existing trees that are there now will have perpetuity to grow and establish. And those are nice oak trees that'll have room and help to create a buffer there between the railroad. It also provides a little bit more separation from the railroad as well, which is beneficial. And on the right here are those landforms that we're talking about. So we replicated the kind of iconic form of a dune with what will be reclaimed or recycled sidewalk from the sidewalk that's going to come out there now. That's that kind of stone face you see there now. It also, those landforms help to protect from the prevailing wind. So those barbecues are directly downwind essentially of this. So it'll block, so you'll be able to grill there without losing your flame, protect some of those prevailing winds, which were significant out there today. We stopped by and trees are leaning over a little bit. It's pretty, and we know it's pretty consistent. So the half court basketball, a couple other images. The one on the left is the kind of intergenerational area on the northern end of the park. You can see the public restroom, which leads rightly into the small playground area with all those playground features that were selected by the public. Here's the skate park. Again, I'm not a skater. I've learned a lot. I'm working on a couple skate park projects right now, but it's got a good mix at either end of more intermediate advanced. While in the middle, there's a lot of flat terrain, bars, smaller transitions for beginners to get involved. One of the cool features here you'll see is that it's kind of a public art constructed element, is the idea of the dunes in the wall that separates the skate park. We're still working out a couple of different nuances and details. As we talk about cost a little bit, we're always trying to be cognizant of that. That's one of the park's most expensive features. And so just trying to understand what we can do there while still replicating the dunes. I think we're playing out different options and how that's keeping options alive as we progress through the project. There's those dune landform features that we're talking about from the turf area looking south toward pedestrian bridge. So we're just going to talk a little bit more about the grant scope.
So here, just we want to briefly highlight where those grant scope items are going. So you see we have them separated for you to see the dog park, the skate park items, everything that's included for the basketball courts.
One of the things to note here is the grantor is very specific about how they broke down, and essentially all the cost of the park is inside these little items, which is a little not traditional for us. We kind of like lay it all out in a big spreadsheet. They have it wrapped up. So this is kind of a graphic way of showing you where the money is going in the park, if that's so to speak.
Right, so when we have like the bottom left corner is the picnic areas, and the grant scope item is to provide picnic and barbecues in the park. In that line item, we're including the DG surfacing that it's on. We're including, you know, the recycled concrete that's going to be stacked for those dune walls and the mow groups and all these parts of it. For the swings, we're including that board and play surfacing that's there and mow group around it.
Yeah, the playground's interesting. It kind of gets carved up.
It gets, yeah, it's because the next one shows rockers and spinners, public art on the water tower and the climbers, things like that. You can see where we're doing renovation of chain link fence, lighting in the park. One of the grant items, for renovating the sidewalk in the park, which was the bottom left corner, the grant itself does not include the parking lot. In the original grant site plan, it doesn't. But you guys have seen that parking lot, it does need to be renovated, and as part of our process in creating this accessible path of travel to the park, we have to provide that accessible parking as well and redo that space because it's not at this moment up to code. And so that is a line item that we've had to include along with that renovation of the sidewalk that wasn't part of the original scoping. And then we have the rest, the perimeter walls of public art, which are focused around the new ADU that's jutting into the park and around the skate park on the side facing the railroad tracks and then between it and the existing utilities, the water tower. So costing, we do want to highlight, we want to be very transparent about where your money is going that the state provided. So this is a big breakdown of all the items that we have tallied for this park. And every time we work on plans that are submitting the conceptual plan, the 50% design development and now 100% design development, we're going back in and updating all the unit costs every time we get bids in from other construction projects. We're updating that. And unfortunately, you guys all know with inflation and escalation of costs, every time we do it, everything's going up. So we want to highlight that at the very bottom of this estimate, we have the grant scope estimate sit next to the rough preliminary estimate. And right now with our cost comparison, we have $13,000 extra. So we're being very mindful of where we're spending the money. And we're also being very conservative at this point because we don't know once it goes out to bid what's going to come in. We don't know what the fiscal climate's going to be when it goes out to bid or about spring next year. So here in the cost comparison, the light blue is from our estimate. The dark blue is the grant estimate, and it's broken down by all those line items that were included in the grant scope. So you can see, you know, in some cases we're higher than the grant scope and others were lower. And so it's just that balance, how it balances out.
Yeah, one of the great example there is the restroom. We found a prefabricated restroom that is a significant cost savings for the project compared to what was scoped in the grant. So that's allowed us to do things like the park, incorporate the parking lot in.
And then this is another way to look at it, see how we're stacked up with the grant scope estimate being on the left and our estimate on the right. You know, we're almost level with that. And then our next steps now, we're finishing up design development. We're going to be getting comments back from city staff on those plans. And then we're going to be moving into construction documents and get those submitted to the city in several stages. We'll have 75% construction documents to the city for review and constructability, and then 100% before we have those final bid plans to go out to the contractor.
One thing I just also want to reiterate is what a joy it has been to work with Shannon. I know you all know that, but it has been an absolute pleasure on our end. We work with a lot of jurisdictions. She's a gem. Sad you're more sad.
They're not doing a skate park over there, are they? Oh, they have a skate park. That's right.
Is there any questions from staff or council?
I have one question. The skate park rendering, so there's no sort of gate in or out of the skate park. It's gonna be with, okay.
The skate park is open, so there's 2 points of entry there from the main sidewalk into the skate park. Yeah. We did look at whether it would be fenced or not and how park staff would be controlling the entry or not. And ultimately it comes down to cost and also just the aesthetics. That whole utility area where the water tower is fenced.
Right.
All the dog park is fenced. If you fence the skate park also, you're fencing that entire side of the park. It's completely fenced off from the rest of the park. And that's just, it's not a great feel when you're in the park.
I love the design. I think it's beautiful. I was just looking at those 2 ports of entry, wishing there was some sort of creative way to put like, what is it, the carousels where you walk through them. Something like that, just to provide just a little buffer for the skaters going in and out, just because that's also where the picnic area is. That's going to be kind of a high traffic area. So that was my only feedback or question, as whether or not there was going to be some sort of not barrier completely, but some sort of walk through or controlled access in and out.
I think one of the other is there's always the unintended consequence of those decisions too. So you provide that barrier and someone's inevitably going to go around it, which means the plants that are planted there are going to get trampled. Even if you fence it off, right? Even if we were to provide a fence, fences are extremely climbable.
Oh,
it
yeah.
becomes an
I'm
attractive
sure.
nuisance, someone can climb over, like, there's always those
And
best
there-
intents versus how it actually gets used, and
Yeah.
it's a really hard thing. You're not the only jurisdiction that grapples with this question.
Right.
At all.
In regards to landscape, I know we're highlighting on local ecology, are we incorporating any native plants?
Yes, we are. We're using native plants and regionally adapted drought tolerant plants. We're really mindful of maintenance and knowing that most municipalities don't have staff for a lot of maintenance and fiddly plants, and so we want to make sure we're putting the right plants in the right spot, so it's not going to be a problem later on.
It's something we see a lot.
Yeah.
People want native plants, but don't know how to maintain them. Maintenance people don't know how to maintain them. It's a great idea in theory, but we have, the maintenance practice hasn't caught up to the needs of those plants. Interestingly enough, side note, a bill is passed in the assembly that is going to require projects to have native plants in them in the next 10 years. So it's going to be an interesting challenge for jurisdictions to keep up with that as well. So.
Very exciting. I think the whole town is just extremely excited for this park. So this is a beautiful presentation.
So I have a quick question also. So the 3 buffers where the barbecue pits, that's gonna be using existing concrete that we're taking out of the hardscape that we have currently?
Yes, it's existing sidewalk. We're working on writing the detail on how that's gonna work. We're gonna have the contractor salvage parts of it and, and construct that face of it.
The existing concrete that's in the ground there now does not have any rebar in it. It's actually the perfect candidate for an application like this, because when they break it and demo it up, we're just asking them not to break it up too much, not haul it off the site and use it here instead.
Some of it, yeah, won't be all of the sidewalk, but we're asking them to salvage part of it, yeah.
And do we have a square, a footage of the actual skate park? What are we talking measurement wise?
I can give you square footage.
Yeah. I wanna say we're about 5,500 square feet. From what I remember.
Yeah, that's about spot on. I think it's 5,600.
I believe it shrunk from what it was.
Yeah, because it was occupying a larger portion of that southern corner, so it is a little smaller. I think if you remember, one of the main reasons we moved it out of that southern corner, that's where all the water is going.
Right.
And hard surfaces and water don't tend to mix well together, so moving it out of that area was a benefit. Allowed for the more softer application of the dog park to mix up better with the water usage.
So as it lays right now, is it like a myriad mix of beginner to somewhat experienced, or is it on one side of the skate park more experienced and the other side little novice?
I have to ask our state, but the way I understand it is the more immediate or intermediate and advanced are kind of on the edges with the bowl and the drop in kind of on the southern end and the lip here that you're seeing. And also there's a kick wall on the northern end that's a more advanced feature on that kind of far end. And then all the steps, pads and rails are a little bit more intermediate, including the rail that's out there on flat terrain. That's kind of a first beginner rail as you work into hubbas and wedges and all those things that I actually don't know what I'm talking about.
So we did keep in mind like the other uses, so it would be skate, but we did
There's
initially
bike,
bike,
yeah.
Scooter.
rollerblade,
Right.
yeah, very good.
And I think the train's a good mix. for that, too.
Right, right.
It's very exciting.
But I don't see a 40-foot half pipe. dude.
Yeah.
No,
Anticipated start date, construction,
That was my-
end date?
We're hoping that we'll have bid plans into the city in February of 2024. So I think that early spring, the spring for the bids going out, the RFP, the contractors.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Mhm.
I just want to,
I just want to let everybody know that one of the challenges that we're facing has to do with painting the water tank. And we just met with the
lessees of the antennas
Mhm.
to get them off the tower, so we'll be able to paint it. And so that is one of the elements that needs to be taken care of before construction begins. So we're just all very cognizant of that and schedule.
Yeah, trying to get three major corporations to move their antennas off the water tower is gonna be a scheduling challenge.
And they need to use the park for their staging of that.
Right. Okay.
Which means during that time, the park will be closed,
Mhm.
while the water tower is being maintained.
Thank you. Next item is community participation.
You have any questions?
I don't have no slips, there's
No.
none.
Oh, there-
If you can, please, there's some forms in the back, if you could just submit them.
And community participation is in regards to an item that is not on the agenda that you wish to talk about. And note that we cannot make any comments or decisions on anything that is being talked during that
I
time.
don't know my question.
It's just a
Well, it's
presentation.
considered on the agenda, not until.
Oh, but they didn't have time. They didn't have the chance. I talked to the mayor about.
Thank you.
He wanted to share and sort of come on to talk about it. So we had a chance.
What do you might want to do?
So give it back to me after. Okay, thank you.
That's questions and information, so.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a quick statement on the Central Park Pavilion. In particular, the wall design facing Pacheco Street. I see, and I spoke to them before the meeting, too, so they answered my question, but I see that the wall stops at the border between the skate and dog park sections. I participated and communicated my concern about the noise that will be generated by both entities facing my property on Pacheco Street. I've asked for a sound wall in the design to be included, and I see there's none planned. I encourage the city to consider the long-term effect from noise exposure as the distance not only to my property, but also the properties on Ninth Street is very close and certainly will be felt by all of us who live close to the park. I appreciate the design team. I think they've done an excellent job and have been easy to keep with. And so that's what I want to say.
Thank you.
For your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is consent calendar. Is there any items on the consent calendar that staff or council would like to pull?
I would like to actually pull 8E until further notice.
Okay. Okay.
And then,
Take it off?
Are we
Yeah,
also
remove
pulling
it.
J?
yes, I'd like to pull J for public. So again, J,
Item J. With that being said, is there a motion to approve the remainder of the consent calendar with items E and J being pulled?
I motion to approve the consent calendar with the change.
Is there a second? Do we have a motion and a second? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so item E is gonna be pulled to a further date. Item J was pulled, the adoption of resolution 2023-46.
I make a motion to approve, agenda item J, adoption resolution number 2023-46.
Is there a second? I'll second.
I can't participate in that. So, that's fine.
Oh, I see.
All those in favor of item J, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. She abstained. Yes. Three to one. Our next item is, city administrator's report.
I actually don't have anything more to report, but if you have any questions about the written report, feel free to ask.
Question? No? All right, next item is, Director of Public Safety report.
I have no report tonight. Thank you. Unless there's any questions.
Okay, our next item, going to public hearing, item 11. Guadalupe Benefit Assessment District 1. Public hearing. Mr. Pico.
No, nothing on this one, sorry, not on, nothing in this one.
No, this one, okay.
I will just say for the record that I believe everybody in the city's in this district. Or almost everybody, the lighting district.
Lighting district, everybody's,
Oh, wait, what item are we on? I'm sorry.
We're on
11.
11. We're on
Number 11.
That's
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, okay, thank you. I had them backwards. I apologize. Yes, I believe there's 2 of the 4 members of this council that live in benefit assessment district number 1. Council member Hernandez and Robles. Since that would only be 2 to vote, the conflict of interest, they're both required to step down because there's a material financial effect distinguishable from members of the public due to their being assessed in this district. So they have to step down, but since we need a vote to go forward, there's a procedure in the parapolitical or the political format or the regulations that allows for a coin flip or a drawing of straws between the 2 so that one of them will stay and vote, and the other will leave the room during the terminate or the consideration of the item. So, Councilmember Hernandez will call the coin, and then what was it?
Tails.
Tails. All right, so I'll be witness.
funny.
Heads it is, so you must leave.
Enjoy your way. Yeah,
Also,
yeah. It's great.
So we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on this item.
Do you want a staff report first?
Oh, staff report, sorry.
Good evening, council, or what's left of it, I should say.
Yes.
This is the annual assessment of for the Guadalupe Benefit Assessment District number 1. And we hold a public hearing to allow anybody present with an opportunity to speak regarding this assessment. City council is responsible for levying assessments. It's the entire year costs and estimated future costs for the landscape and lighting associated with the Guadalupe Benefit Assessment District 1, which includes the Point South area and the Riverview area. The Riverview is 50 parcels, Point South is 254 parcels. We are not changing the per parcel assessment this year. And in your packet includes an engineering report that outlines the costs associated with this benefit district, and I'm open to questions.
So now I can open this up to public hearing.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll open this up to public hearing at 7:53
7:13.
7:13.
or 7.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Oh, my goodness.
oh, man, it's there. Let me get my stand.
Would you like these?
7:13.
Was there any slips?
I have no slips of anybody.
No? Okay. So there you go.
Okay, we'll close this public hearing at 7:14. Any questions from the council?
Since you vote.
No vote?
Did you want to say something?
Okay, can we get roll call, please?
Councilmember
Oh, wait,
Robles.
we need a motion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I missed
Can we
it.
get a motion for resolution
There we go.
2023-48?
All motion to adopt resolution 2023-48.
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Robles.
Yes.
Councilmember Rizaldi.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Council Junior.
Aye. Next item is item number 12, Guadalupe Lighting District.
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, just a quick comment. Because almost everybody in the city, if not everyone, is a member of this district, the reason why we don't have to do the coin toss is because the effect on your finances is essentially the same as every member of the public, and so there's an exception for that. That's why we don't have to go through that procedure for this particular district. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Correction. Because these are, this is an older district, I was wrong, my information was incorrect. Because this is an older district that doesn't include Point Sal Dunes or Pasadena, that wouldn't have applied. So it could though, it could if 5 members of council or 3 members of council lived in this district, because it's still a substantial portion of the population. So anyway, that's an issue for another day though. My apologies for my misunderstanding.
Good evening, this is the second public hearing for an assessment district. This one's the Guadalupe Lighting District. And again, I'm requesting that you do a public hearing to provide everybody an opportunity to provide comment on this. Yet again, costs are unchanged from last year for individual parcels. And I did go through all these parcels to verify their land use and that they were relevant parcels. If you are in Point Sal Dunes or in Riverview, you are already in a lighting district. So you do not get included on 2 lighting districts. And if you are in Pasadena, likewise, Pasadena has its own lighting district. You are also not in 2 lighting districts. So these are all the parcels outside of those 2 areas. And you can see rates have remained unchanged since fiscal year 18-19. And an interesting nuance of this one this year is this one is also paid through property taxes. It is that old. Because of the increase in property taxes, there's been several $100,000 that have accrued in this particular lighting district. Our city attorney has informed me that lighting can include not just street lights, but also lights in parks. So one of the things about the park project is that it has a lighting component, and we are allowed to use the lighting district funding to pay for the lighting in the park. So that's allowing us to account for the rise in costs of the park by being able to contribute some of the funds. So in the engineering report on this one, you will see up to $300,000 of this being accounted for, directed towards the lighting in Central Park. But otherwise, it doesn't change the per parcel allotment or the assessment. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Tinkle. Does this affect me where I live?
Yes, it does, but I believe, and I unfortunately don't have hard numbers, as long as, I want to say it backwards. As long as at least 15% of the population, or 25% of the population of the city resides in this district, which I'm pretty sure it does, then it's considered an non-material effect, so you are allowed to participate. That's the point I was trying to make very poorly earlier.
Okay. No worries, thank you.
We're keeping you busy today.
What's that?
We're keeping you busy today on your show. Who came up with this agenda?
Shannon.
Okay. I'd like to open this up to public hearing at 7:20. 7:20.
Do you have any?
You don't have no slips on this one either.
No.
No comments on that?
It's just so interesting.
Well, I close this at 7:20. Did I get a roll call, please?
Motion?
Oh, motion, sorry. I get a motion to approve resolution 2023-49.
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2023-49.
Can we get a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Robles,
I,
Councilmember Hernandez,
Hi.
Councilmember Gonzalez,
Hi.
Mayor Pro Tem Costa Junior,
Aye.
Mayor Joe Diaz.
Next item, regular business. Item 13, community benefit agreement between the city of Guadalupe and the city and the Central Coast Processing LLC. Mr. Bowden.
Oh, thank you, Mayor and Council, staff and public. Normally I kind of do a shorter truncated version of a staff report, but because this is our first sort of next step in movement in cannabis, and I just want to read the staff report because I think it's important to it might get a little lengthy, but I think it's important that we read it. And so the recommendation tonight is that the city council adopt resolution 2023-50 approving a community benefit agreement by and between the city of Guadalupe. In way of background, on May 25th, 2021, the city council adopted ordinance number 2021-494. It's called the Cannabis Ordinance, establishing 9.22 of the Guadalupe Municipal Code relating to the operation of commercial cannabis business activity in the city of Guadalupe. The Cannabis Ordinance establishes the operational requirements with which all commercial cannabis businesses in the city must comply. Along with meeting the requirements of the Cannabis Ordinance, the operator of each cannabis business must also enter into what we call a community benefit agreement with the city, setting forth additional terms and conditions under which the cannabis facility will operate. Such additional terms and conditions may include, but are not limited to, providing public outreach and education, community service, payment of fees and other charges as mutually agreed, and other terms and conditions to protect and promote the public health, safety, and welfare of the city and its residents. So therefore, on January 6, 2022, the Central Coast Processing submitted an application to the city of Guadalupe for a cannabis business consisting of a micro business license located at the old cooler at 151 Obispo Street. A cannabis micro business is allowed to operate 3 or more different types of commercial cannabis activities from a single premises and under a single license from the Department of Cannabis Control, CCP. Proposed operations include the processing of raw cannabis flower or leaf, non-volatile manufacturing and distribution. As part of the application vetting and selection process, Central Coast Processing was required to include in its application a description of the community benefit it was willing to offer to the city. Central Coast application was vetted by me and presented to the city council for final selection and authorization to complete the process for obtaining a cannabis business permit. The proposed community benefit being offered by Central Coast have been incorporated into the attached community benefit agreement in this packet. If approved by the council, the enumerated community benefit shall become enforceable conditions of approval and made part of the cannabis business permit granted to Central Coast Processing. Any breaches of this agreement shall be deemed a violation of this. The community benefits being proposed by Central Coast Processing are summarized below and are described in greater detail in the attached agreement. I won't read that. So the benefit in this type of operation is the business shall be subject to a fee which was negotiated of 2% on the gross receipts of all commercial cannabis activities, including cultivation, processing, manufacturing, and or distribution. The obligation to pay the public benefit fee shall cease if the city of Guadalupe implements a voter-approved cannabis business tax in the future. Community benefits, and this is good because I know you guys were really interested when they gave their initial presentation. Shall implement a community benefit program with 3 months of the effective date of the agreement and shall maintain that program for the entire term of the agreement. The community benefit program include all of the following required benefits for a commercial CCP commercial processing. Central Coast Commercial Processing shall take quantifiable steps to establish and maintain high standards for quality and ethics, shall establish and maintain a cannabis security cooperative to provide specialized training and security positions for licensed cannabis businesses, shall recruit and hire local Guadalupe residents trained by the cooperative to work in security positions at their facilities and or shall help trainees to obtain employment at other licensed cannabis businesses in the area. Shall engage in efforts to encourage other licensed cannabis businesses in the area to buy or employ products and services from local businesses and vendors within the city of Guadalupe, sustainability at mind here. Shall require its vendors to buy or employ products and services from local merchants within the city of Guadalupe and or shall help local merchants understand what products and services are needed so that they may seek to offer them. Shall organize the host one or more cannabis jobs and career fairs each year to allow licensed cannabis businesses within the area to engage with local talent and labor who may be seeking employment. Such jobs and career fairs shall be free and open to the public. They shall also donate 1% of its profits. I mean, as you can see, the other one was 2% of gross receipts, which goes to the city. This 1% of gross profits goes, all these activities are provide financial support to local charities, community groups, and nonprofit organizations. Shall take tangible steps to encourage other licensed cannabis businesses to fund local charities, community groups, and nonprofit organization as an organized unit. Shall take quantifiable steps to provide for professional and or career advancement or on-site job training that are above normal expectations for similar businesses. Shall take quantifiable steps to provide a direct and positive impact on community residents. Such positive impacts shall include jobs for minorities and veterans from the city of Guadalupe and surrounding communities. The fiscal impact involved here again, and I'll restate that as one of the business, once the business commences operations, city will receive a positive impact on its revenue from the commercial cannabis business. The business will be subject to a fee of 2% on gross receipts of all commercial cannabis activities, including cultivation, processing, manufacturing, and or distribution. Local nonprofits will also receive a community benefit as stated above. So we also have Jillian Collins here, who is part of that process. If you want to talk to her and ask her any questions before you consider this tonight.
Julian, would you please come up to the podium?
Sorry about the pop.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to come tonight.
No problem.
Do you have questions? From council? Any questions from staff? I'm just glad you guys are moving along.
Yeah, trying to.
Yeah,
How far along are we in the process there as far as the build out?
So we just are ready to submit for our second plan check comment resubmission. And so as soon as that goes through, we're hoping we don't get a third plan check or any comments. We think we've addressed everything in terms of building and planning. So as soon as permits are able to be pulled, we're fast tracking. We've got equipment staged already. I think the longest lead time will be the fire sprinkler system, but I'm advising on them every day to get more people on site. We have that permit approved already. Our goal is to open no later than late August, just so we can make the crop season in the fall.
oh, good.
Yeah, everyone's anxious to bring in some capital.
No questions. I think for Todd, I would love to update the Exhibit C version of some of our local nonprofits.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we can connect with you and just updating some of them. I see the cultural arts center is combined with some things in here.
Okay.
I have a question on that list as well. I intend to do some outreach because I know certain nonprofits and charities are unable to intake charitable capital from cannabis businesses that might deter additional grants they might get. So I'm going to work with the city council, specifically in the organizations, to understand which charities are available to take in like cannabis funds, charitable contributions.
Yeah.
I have a question. I didn't think that list was necessarily definitive of what was allowed. I thought it was just an illustrative. So it's not necessary to make any changes to that document. since you're not required to, you're not limited to only those organizations. Am I correct on
I
that?
believe so, yes.
Okay,
Okay, well then,
I think that's what I thought as well, as because it was included that these were the limited, so, okay.
that was just a
It's
convenient
just
list
kind of
that
an
we have.
idea. Okay.
Yeah, that was to say these are the types of organizations that we know about, and that's not exhaustive, and it's not limited to those. So the reason I point that out is so we don't have to continue this to approve that exhibit, because
Yeah.
it's not important, just illustrate.
But you're hoping to get more information in
Yeah,
terms
it'd
of
be,
needs for nonprofits, is that correct?
yeah, it'd be beneficial for us to understand the needs of the community and specific nonprofits that are in more of the need that we can help support.
There's actually, oh, I can't tell if this is on.
It's on.
There's a nonprofit coalition that meets, I think it's the first Friday
At the
of every
senior
month
center.
at the senior center.
Okay,
So if that's something that you're interested in, I can connect you with.
yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
I've done nonprofit management for over a decade, and so just being really in tune with how we can benefit the community and the organizations that serve it would be amazing. Thank you.
Wonderful, that's really good to know.
I'm so excited to hear that you guys really want to engage within our community. I think that's really important.
Can I just put a shout out to Jillian, because she's been absolutely fantastic to work with and from the start to finish. And I know even Shannon has indicated that when it came to the sidewalk issues, and then I think even Michael Cash, the public safety director / everything, has indicated the same. So I wanted to say that I think you've been great to work with from a staffing level.
I'll be here at least once a week for a couple days going forward as we get closer to operation starting. And just super grateful to have a great city council and staff. And Shannon, I'm so sad that you're leaving. It's the first I've heard of it. So definitely send me your phone number.
Wonderful. One thing you can do to support, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Do you have?
Then we
First.
Okay.
get a motion to approve resolution 2023-56.
I'll motion to adopt resolution number 2023-50.
Then we get a second.
I love that.
Can we get roll call on this?
Councilmember Robus,
Councilmember Menendez. Councilmember Rizaldi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Aye. Next item is item number 14, future agenda item.
We can have a big agenda coming up.
I don't have anything to add. Is any staff? Future agenda items?
No? Okay,
Do we have an upcoming date for joint meeting with the school district? Is that gonna be something that? I know we
Oh,
have previously.
Yeah, no, oh, yeah, I guess in talking with Dr. Handel, the indication is to do it in October.
October, okay.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if
Yeah.
it's happening before the end of the. And then do we have a meeting for the MOU agreement before the school year starts, or is that gonna be something that's brought to council, or is that gonna be staff meeting with the school district regarding an MOU for facilities before the school year starts?
If I can get a mic working,
You're good.
I can't. Okay.
There you go. You're in.
So I actually just emailed Dr. Handel today to set up that meeting because I have there's an existing soccer league in Santa Maria that wants to extend out to Guadalupe and bring their youth league and their adult rec leagues over here. So I'm working with them right now, but one thing that I told Dr. Handel is obviously before we even get into that process, I want to make sure we have the use agreement done. Because I would like us to use their soccer field, just because of all the gopher holes and things at O'Connell. I would like to have that fixed before we start really encouraging youth to be out on that field. That is something that the Rec and Park Commission meeting or Rec and Park Commission is going to bring up an agenda item on a possible grant to fix that field. Sorry, I kind of rabbit trailed. But we will be setting up that meeting hopefully in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. So then that will come across our next month.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We haven't said anything.
Council activity community report. Item 15. Anything?
I attended the reading festival at Mary Berrien, and it was just a beautiful event, having the community changers and family service agency come out all together. Chief Cash was there, Debbie was there, and really enjoyed seeing everyone. They were really excited also to see the firefighters, and I think heard many kids say, I want to be a police, I want to be a fireman. So that was really exciting to be able to hear.
Am I able to, I know I'm not council, but can I make a announcement? I just want to throw out there, I've been promoting this on our social media, but just for anyone that doesn't follow to the social media. The deadline to register for the color run is the Thursday, June 22nd. If you're paying with card, money order or check, and then it's the 23rd for cash payments only. And that you can still register after that time, but shirts will not be available after that date. So you would just be registering to participate, and that's it. And the event is on Saturday, July 29th.
Mr. Bowler.
I know that this is the council activity committee report, but I also want to put a shout out to Christina, and I was there with, Christine was there with her husband Saturday for the recognition of Michael Cash and the mayor regarding the January 9th flood, and they got received what was it? A reward for, or not a reward, but yeah, for doing a great job from the women's leadership group. So
I was standing there and I was really proud and excited to just hear all that feedback. So thank you, Chief and Mayor Son, for the hard work and dedication for the community.
Anything else? Okay. Can we get a motion to adjourn to our successor agency meeting?
I'd make a motion to adjourn
you
to the successor agency board meeting.
I'll second this.
But you want it recorded?
Yes.
yeah.
That was a motion and a second. All those in favor? Say aye.
Bye.
Aye. Hey,
Yes.
successor agency, item number 17. Declaration of certain agencies owned land as surplus of the site 995 Guadalupe Street. And authorize the successor agency executive director to set notices of availability as to the surplus land. Mr. Cinco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Okay, this is a funny one. That when the Guadalupe Redevelopment Agency was basically wound down through state action many years ago now, and our organization has officially gone away, and it's been replaced by the successor agency ourselves, essentially. That time there was a plan, long-term property management plan that was prepared, and it included the site of the former Al's Union, which is finally, as you know, ready to be moved forward. There was always the plan to decontaminate, I don't know if that's the right language, decontaminate the land that had some pollution. And then once that was done, it was to be sold. And we're finally at that point. However, there's been a complication through changes in state law brought about by the legislature's desire to improve housing opportunities, especially affordable housing. This land, if we're trying to sell this land, it means it's surplus land. And under the California Surplus Land Act that was recently amended last couple of years, there's a procedure now that's required. We used to be able to just sell our land like anyone else. But under the amendments to the law, which are set forth in the staff report, and I will not bore you with the details, we need to give written notice of availability of this land to local public entities, including schools and park districts, as well as to housing sponsors that have notified housing and community development at the state level of their interest in surplus properties. The these amendments to the Surplus Land Act impose mandatory negotiation requirements on city and any entities that are interested. And it requires giving priority to affordable housing developments. There are certain exemptions to this requirement, but none of them apply. So we have to proceed by making a formal declaration of surplus and giving notice to the entities that is available for this process. Now, it's important to note that the city is not required to sell the land to any of these agencies, if any are interested. We just have to engage in a good faith negotiation, and the council would have the ultimate decision if it's decided that it doesn't believe the use of that land is appropriate or whatever. It's able to do that. But the first step is to get the notice going, see if anyone's interested, and then if so, enter into a 90-day period of good faith negotiation. And that's what we're here to do tonight. So the recommendation from staff is to adopt, I don't know if we have a resolution number on this one.
We have,
Yes, successor agency resolution number 2023-02. Adopt that.
It's beyond the staff.
That's attached to the staff report. That was my mistake. I wrote this report, so I put that on there. And that would be a resolution declaring the Al's Union site at 995 Guadalupe Street to be surplus pursuant to the surplus land act. I'm available for any questions.
is there any questions from council?
No, I think you. Yeah.
So come up to the podium, please.
I wasn't here for that, but, hi, I'm Willie Gonzalez, I'm a realtor. Is the city gonna be able to rezone that property? Because the value of that property is gonna be dictated by the zoning on it.
Well, right now, the property is zoned mixed use, which was just rezoned, part of our general plan process. It's not technically zoned for housing, under our mixed use zoning, the housing would it could be part of a project where the houses are upstairs, or the apartments are upstairs.
It could be like. a
And then
condo.
like commercial downstairs.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do all housing, it would require a conditional use permit, and it would come before the council, since they act as the planning commission too. And that's what I was referring to, that they wouldn't have to agree to the project.
So right now, as of now, it's mixed use.
Yes,
Oh, it's quite more valuable like that. So,
and that would be the basis for the negotiation. That would be the fair market value that would be used by the city to negotiate the value of the purchase.
and you know, my profession would be the best interest to actually put it on the market to give the highest bidder.
Well, that was the plan.
Yeah.
Although we did have some ideas for how we would market it, not just for the highest bidder. There's some
Development proposal.
development proposals for things that would help the downtown plan.
Yeah, well, you would advertise it in that.
Yes, exactly.
They're gonna know.
Yes, but we have to go through this process under state law.
All right. Well, that's good.
Keep in mind, that's a
Lot of people
50
living
foot
behind.
by 50 foot by 360 foot depth.
Yeah.
Half an acre?
It's a nice piece of property. You're talking about the one that's across from the.
The vet's hall.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good piece of property right there. As long as it's not your
That was
town.
combined with that other project.
They got it. Did you guys get a phase 1 and 2 clearance on the property already?
I don't know the answer. Our planner's not here. We're ready. I don't know the answer to that.
I do know that there's $1.5 million grant in cleanup on that. property.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's more than done.
yeah.
All right, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council? Is there a motion to approve successor agency resolution number 2023-02?
I'll motion to approve successor agency resolution number 2023-02.
You know, motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Robles,
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez, Aye. Councilmember Rizaldi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Carlson Junior.
Aye. There. There are motions to adjourn.
And make a motion to adjourn.
No.
Next step.
So there are we have a motion to adjourn, is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye. Aye.